Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today our commander is Betor, Ancestor's Voice, the spirit dragon of the Abzan houses on Tarkir. Thanks to InKing727 for requesting this commander. Betor manifested from the Storm Nexus ritual after Narset and the leaders of the humanoid clans called them forth. The lost spirits of the Abzan united, taking the form of Betor and speaking as the collective consciousness of all Abzan past. They serve as a link between the living and the dead and are considered a part of each of the families of their resurrected clan. I think Betor is an awesome way to incorporate the Abzan's connection with their ancestor spirits after the events of Tarkir Dragonstorm, and I'm excited to show you what I put together for them. But before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. Betor, Ancestor's Voice is a 3/5 legendary spirit dragon for 2 and, of course, Abzan mana, a white, a black, and a green. It has flying and lifelink, and at the beginning of your end step, put a number of +1/+1 counters on up to 1 other target creature you control equal to the amount of life you gained this turn. Return up to 1 target creature card with mana value less than or equal to the amount of life you lost this turn from your graveyard to the battlefield. So as you can see, Betor does it all. Whether we're losing life or gaining it, we're getting rewarded in the form of creatures or, bigness. I already mentioned how cool Betor is in the thematic sense, but the mechanical aspect of this can't be understated. If we're gaining ground, they ensure our forces only get stronger in the process, and if we're under assault, they call our honored dead back to join the fight. Plus, they're a big dragon who can swoop in with lifelink and start the first of those balls rolling, giving us inevitability in the command zone. So who are we to question the wisdom of our ancestors? Betor rewards us for gaining life and for losing it, so both are a major part of our deck design. They also want us to have creatures on the battlefield and in the bin, so we have more than the usual cohort of, cohorts, none of which are afraid of our attack step. We've paid attention to our mana curve to ensure we can take advantage of paying life or losing it in other ways to call back any friend who falls. Likewise, we have solid keywords and abilities sprinkled through our creature base to ensure the champion of our surviving warriors gets the most out of their swolification. Thus goes our Paranation. That may not be a simple game plan, but our tricks don't end there. We obviously have payoffs for gaining and losing life, but we also have ways to advance our board when our creatures leave the battlefield or when they leave the graveyard. We have ways to take advantage of the counters Betor grants us, from Evasion to Lifegain to instantaneous Recursion, plus a way to spend those counters for value as well. We have creature fall effects to take advantage of our high creature count and the fact that we generally return at least 1 creature from the graveyard on each of our end steps, as well as some backup Recursion effects to supplement Betor's blessings. We even have ways of draining our opponent's life to give them a little taste of how happily our life total bounces up and down. Sharing is caring after all. This deck has a lot of moving pieces, so it's designed to give us a lot back for putting in the work to pilot it. We cycle our cards through our hand, our board, our yard, and then back again, juggling our turns like we juggle our calendar. We watch our life total drop and rise like a 401k that's a little too volatile. We go on the offensive, make our trades, push our damage, and then punch out and pass. We don't mind setbacks because our approach is flexible and resilient, and it's hard to slow us down because we're good at recovering our equilibrium. Most of all, we pace ourselves, planning our progress forward by taking the long view and thinking annually instead of quarterly. Our deck is an investment in our future that requires a hands-on approach, but it's all worth it in the end when we come out with our health and our wealth. We have our profit and our peace both, thanks to our carefully maintained work-life balance. You'll enjoy this deck if you like handling complicated interactions between cards and resources and zones and turns, or if you're the type for whom a management sim sounds like a relaxing evening, and the only thing it's missing is a way to beat your friends in the process. So, this Moxfield list we're going over today, as usual, is linked in the video description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section, filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which, for me, did not make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done and you want to go harder with it, or if this deck is giving you some inspiration and you have a different idea for where you want to take it, that considering section is a great place to get those ideas when you build your own Betor Ancestor's Voice deck. So, as usual, we're going to start with our game plan. But actually, this time we might do something else first. This trigger from Betor, I just want to cover exactly how this works. So at the beginning of your end step, we get to choose a target creature we control and a target creature card in our graveyard. We can do up to one of each of those. So we don't have to choose either one, technically. We can choose one, the other, or both, or neither. However, if we're choosing a creature in play, we have to choose it when this ability goes on the stack. So we can't, reanimate a creature with Betor's second half of the ability and then choose that creature, obviously, because it has to go in order. In addition, when we choose this creature card in our graveyard, the valid target for that creature card is a creature card with mana value equal to the amount of life we lost this turn. So when this ability goes on the stack, if we're choosing a card in our graveyard, we have to have already lost that amount of life, an amount of life equal to or greater than the mana value of the creature card we're choosing. So we don't get to choose a creature with any mana value and then just fail to reanimate it. It has to specifically have a mana value less than or equal to the amount of life we lost this turn. It also means that if we have an end step trigger that would gain us life or lose us life, let's talk about losing life, during our end step, we cannot stack this trigger and that trigger in such a way that we lose extra life, which then qualifies us to reanimate a bigger creature. When Betor's ability goes on the stack, we have to choose a creature then that fits this criteria, no matter how much life we continue to lose in our end step once this is already on the stack. However, conversely, if we've chosen a creature in play with this first half of the ability, if we happen to gain more life during our end step, and the trigger that gains us that life resolves before Betor's trigger resolves, then we will put additional counters based on that amount of life we gained, because it cares about the amount of life we gained when it resolves to put those counters on it. However, when it comes to life lost, it cares about that amount when we are putting this ability on the stack and choosing that creature card in our graveyard as a target. So just to be clear, a little bit fiddly with some of these things, but ultimately it just means the stuff that happens during our end step is not going to affect this, with the exception of we'll get extra counters if we gain extra life in our end step before this resolves. Otherwise, all we need to think about when it comes to this trigger is choosing targets that qualify at our end step based on things that have already happened this turn. I'm sure that makes sense, but if it doesn't, put your questions in the comments and I will endeavor to answer them. So now we're going to begin with our game plan, starting with our Lifegain section. This is a section full of cards that are meant to gain us life so that we can get extra counters on on one of our creatures, that is, thanks to Betor's end-step trigger. We'll start with Children of Corliss. Children of Corliss is an old card from Original Time Spiral. It's a single white for a 1/1 Human Rebel Cleric that says, sacrifice this creature and you gain life equal to the life you've lost this turn. This is really sweet. It means if we've already lost, let's say, 6 life this turn, we're going to gain 6 life back. If we've lost 20 life this turn, we're going to gain 20 life. And it does not negate the fact that we lost that life. So if we use this on our turn, then that means we will have, let's say if we've lost 5 life or something, and Children of Corliss, we sacrifice it and we gain 5 life. That means if this happens before our end step, we go to our end step and we're going to get to put 5 1/1 counters on something and reanimate something, mana value 5 or less. We probably want, if we're going to sacrifice the children during our turn, to sacrifice it prior to our end step. So probably during our second main phase. That way, at the very least, if we've lost any life, which we probably have if we're sacrificing this children, then we will have lost at least 1 life, so we can reanimate the children themselves. Pretty good as a way to protect ourselves on our opponent's turns as well, assuming our opponents don't just kill us all in one with 1 hit. So lots of good plays with Children of Corliss, especially because it allows us to take life loss and turn it into life gain as well during our turn. Next we have Haywire Might. This is a single generic mana for a 1/1 artifact creature insect that says when it dies, we gain 2 life. Pretty good. Gives us the ability to put at least 2 counters on something with Betor at our end step. Also, if we pay a green and sacrifice the might, we can exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. So while it doesn't hit creature enchantments or creature artifacts, it does exile. So for a single green and a 1, it's kind of, in some ways better and in some ways worse, of a naturalize, in addition to gaining us 2 life. So as long as we've lost at least 1 life during our turn, we can bring the might back and do it again. Plus, it's put a couple counters on one of our creatures. Next, we have Virulent Emissary from the recent Lorwyn Eclipsed set. This is a single green for a 1/1 Elf Assassin with Death Touch that says whenever another creature we control enters, we gain a life. This is a Soul Sister of sorts, a creature that gains us life when we have creatures enter. The original Soul Sister, Soul Warden, also cares about our opponent's creatures entering. That would be nice as a way of gaining life, but we don't have triggers from Betor based on the amount of life we gain on other people's turns. So running a single green Death Toucher that gains us at least 1 life anytime something comes in. We might be gaining life from other creatures as well or other sources. The point is, by putting counters on our 1/1 Death Touch, we're able to use this not just to gain life, but also to push damage. Death Touch, as I have often said, is a little bit of a pseudo-evasive ability. In Commander, you have 40 life. So if I attack you with a Virulent Emissary for just 1 damage, you might block with a token, and just trade. But if the Virulent Emissary has gotten a few counters on it, if it's like a 4/4, you're either going to trade a bunch of tokens away if you care about not having your tokens, or you're probably not going to block, because anything that you would block with, unless it's indestructible, is going to trade with the Emissary thanks to Death Touch. So the likelihood of you saying, oh, I don't care about these creatures that I spent a bunch of mana on and want to get value out of, is pretty low, versus you saying, oh, it's doing 4 damage? Well, I've got 40 life. I don't care about 4 damage. So usually, oftentimes at least, Death Touch can make a player decide not to block. So it's sort of pseudo-evasion in that way. And if that's not the case, we're probably trading with something solid if our Emissary is big enough. And it's easy to make them big enough thanks to this Lifegain that we're getting. So yeah, all that to say, this can be a good attacker and a good blocker or a way to ward off attacks in the first place. It gives us life to put counters on our creatures, including itself, and it's extremely easy to recur thanks to Betor because it only costs 1 mana. Neat. Next we have Basilica Screecher. This is one of several cards that has Extort. This is a 1/2 bat for 1 and a black. It flies and it has Extort. Extort is an ability that says whenever we cast a spell, doesn't matter what spell or when, it just essentially gives all of our spells kicker of pay 1 Orja of hybrid mana, so either a white or a black. If we pay that mana when we cast that spell, each opponent will lose a life and we will gain that much life, meaning if we've got 3 opponents, each will lose 1 and we will gain 3 life. So using Extort on our own turn is great, because it drains our opponents just a little bit, not really enough, it's enough to annoy them, but not really enough to do a huge amount of damage to them. But if we have 3 opponents, we're gaining 3 life, which means 3 counters at minimum are going to go on one of our creatures thanks to Betor at our end step. So this can really be a big source of life gain for us over the course of the game, as well as being a nice mana sink. If we've just got extra white or black mana lying around, we can use it when we're casting our other spells that turn to not just gain life, but to make sure we are being mana efficient. So yeah, that's Basilica Screecher. And again, it's just 2 drop, a 2-mana creature, so it's going to come back easily. So will Daxos. Daxos is double white for a 2-star legendary enchantment creature demigod with a toughness equal to our devotion to white. Now what is devotion? Devotion means we look at all of the permanents we have in play and we count up the white mana pips in their casting cost. So for example, if we had these 7 cards in play, not counting Heliod's Intervention because it's an instant, then we would look at all of the mana pips that they have. Haywire Might's not contributing any colored pips. Virulent Emissary and Galligrators are contributing 1 each to our green, so devotion to green of 2. Elazilkor and the Basilica Screecher are contributing 1 each to our black, so devotion to black of 2. And Elazilkor, Daxos, and Children of Corliss are contributing a total of 4 white mana, so our devotion to 4 is white, meaning Daxos' toughness is 4, at least while we have those permanents in play. So Daxos would be a 2/4 with that board. Pretty nice. At the very least, Daxos is going to be a 2/2. That's all right. And Daxos says whenever another creature we control enters or dies, we gain 1 life. So counting the creatures that enter, other than himself, makes Daxos a Soul Sister. Counting the creatures that die, other than himself, makes him a Blood Artist. Not really. It kind of makes him a Blood Artist. It, does not the drain part, but the gain part. So yeah, Daxos is here to gain us life in a lot of different ways. And if we're doing combat with this deck, which we definitely are, we're going to have a bunch of creatures dying, and we're going to have creatures re-enter, and so forth. So yeah, lots of life gain from Daxos. Ella's Ilkor is next. Ella's Ilkor is even more of a Soul Sister and Blood Artist. So for a white and a black, we get a 2/2 legendary Phyrexian Core Cleric with Death Touch. We talked about how good that is. Whenever another creature we control enters, we gain a life, so Soul Sister, and whenever another creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. So that other half of the Blood Artist effect. So pretty good. Draining opponents, gaining life, being a good blocker, we're set with Ella's Ilkor. Gallag Readers is next. Another 2-drop, 1 and a green, for a 1/1 Elf Druid with an Alliance trigger. Whenever another creature we control enters, we choose one of these 3 that hasn't been chosen this turn. We can put a 1/1 counter on the Gallag Readers, we can make a tapped treasure token, or we can gain 2 life. Normally, in decks that run Gallag Readers, gaining 2 life is sort of the third thing we do. In this deck, it might be the first one. Just having a creature enter and then gaining 2 life from the Gallag Readers when it enters means we can put 2 counters on one of our creatures. It might even be the Gallag Readers itself, which is better than it putting a single counter on itself. Of course, we might get both as well. But oftentimes, making a tapped treasure token, if it's not the first thing we're doing, it's probably the second, because a little bit of ramp, a little bit of a slow rebate to all of our creatures, at least the first one that we have each turn, or at least once each turn, is pretty sweet. So yeah, lots of good that can come from this. And from all of these 2-drops, because they're 1 and 2 drops, I should say, because they're easy to recur with our commander. Let's talk about Heliod's Intervention now. X and double white gives us an instant that's modal. We can either destroy X target artifacts and or enchantments, or we can have target player gain twice X life. So this is going to be us, obviously, as a way for us to gain a bunch of life and thereby put a bunch of counters on our creatures, or we can use this at instant speed to save ourselves if we think we're going to die from some attack or other effect. We can also use this as removal and get rid of just a single artifact or an enchantment for X equals 1, but a lot of other ones if we need to do more than that. So yeah, the flexibility is really nice. Next up, we have Scheming Silvertongue. This is from the recent, as of time of recording, Secrets of Strixhaven set. 1 and a black gives us a 1/3 Vampire Warlock with flying and lifelink, gains us life, that says at the beginning of our second main phase, if we gained 2 or more life this turn, which is easy to do if we put even 1 counter on the Silvertongue, then this creature becomes prepared. Prepared means it has this prepare spell available to us, a copy of it, in sort of an exile, kind of. And if we cast it, it becomes unprepared. So hopefully, during our first main phase, or combat, or during our upkeep, sometime before our second main phase, we can gain 2 or more life, making the Silvertongue prepared, and then we can cast Sign in Blood, just 2 black for a sorcery that has target player draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. So yeah, we can use this to hurt our opponents, although it will gain them cards as well. But it's pretty nice to be able to say, okay, we gained 2 life, so we're going to cast Sign in Blood, lose that 2 life. Now we've gained and lost life, so we'll get both halves of Betor's trigger, assuming we have a creature in play and a creature in our graveyard that qualifies, in addition to putting 2 cards in our hand. And we can do that Sign in Blood thing every turn that we've gained 2 or more life before our second main phase. So pretty good here. Next we have Sorin of House Markov. This is Baby Sorin. He looks just as grumpy as he did during the Crimson Vow set. This is 1 and a black for a 1/4 life-linking legendary human noble, so lifelink already pretty good for us, but Sorin also has Extort. So we've got that kicker cost for a white or a black for any of our spells, and we can probably gain 3 life if we have 3 opponents just by casting any other spell. Also, at the beginning of each of our post-combat main phases, if we've gained 3 or more life this turn, we exile Sorin and return him to the battlefield transformed as Sorin Ravenous Neonate, Planeswalker Sorin. He's got 3 loyalty, he is a Sorin Planeswalker, and he still has Extort, so we can keep gaining life with that kicker cost every time we cast our spells. We can plus Sorin for 2 to make a food token. Food tokens are great in this deck because they let us bank the ability to gain life on later turns, or obviously the usual food thing, we can use them to gain life when we need it, just in case we're hurting for life. Seems good. We can also -1 Sorin to have him deal damage equal to the amount of life we gained this turn to any target. So this is a creature removal spell, or we can hit our opponents with this technically. And if we've gained quite a bit of life, whether it's through extort before Sorin flipped, or eating food tokens, or any other way, we can burn our opponents or take out a creature. Either way, just a -1 with Sorin. Particularly nice because we can do that as soon as Sorin flips as well, since we haven't activated any loyalty abilities. So yeah, pretty good. And if we -6 Sorin, if we can get that high, we gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types, and we put a lifelink counter on it if we control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin. So any other white permanent in play, including our commander, any creature that is white in addition to other colors rather, is still white, then we get to make whatever thing we've stolen, whether it's a big creature or a commander or anything else, a lifelinker as well. So it's even more of a source of life gain for us. Next up is Breathless Knight. I think this card is really cool. This is 1, a white and a black for a 2/2 Spirit Knight. It flies and it has lifelink. Already pretty good. Evasion with lifelink is a great way for us to gain life. And it says whenever this creature or another creature we control enters, if that creature entered from a graveyard or if we cast it from a graveyard, we put a 1/1 counter on the Breathless Knight. So if we're reanimating things with Betor, every time the Breathless Knight sees us reanimate something, it's seeing a creature enter from a graveyard, so it's going to get a counter. Including if the Breathless Knight itself gets reanimated, then we're going to get to come in with a counter. A 3/3 flyer with lifelink for essentially 3 is very good, and it's just going to keep gaining counters from there, especially if we choose to put Betor's triggers counters on the Breathless Knight. It can get really good. Cauldron of Essence, another Secrets of Strixhaven card, is next. 1, a black and a green for an artifact that says whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So it's a Blood Artist as a pot, you know. It also has the Witherbloom symbol on it, kind of. Take a look. Anyway, for 1, a black and a green, tap it and sack a creature, we can return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield, but only at sorcery speed. So this is really great. If we have like a small token creature or any other like small creature that we don't need, then we can sacrifice it and go reanimate a much bigger or more relevant creature for us. We have to do it at sorcery speed, and it costs us 3 mana, but still, it is causing a creature to die, which will trigger the first half of Cauldron of Essence, meaning we're going to gain a life. So whatever creature we've brought back, we might be able to put a counter on when we go to the end step. And since we sacked a creature, if we sacrificed a small creature and we've lost some life this turn, that means that small creature is easy for Betor to bring back. So for 3 mana, we've just drained our opponents for 1, gained a little life, letting us put counters on things, and just gotten the big creature back into play without really losing anything. Pretty good. Next up, we have Envoy of the Ancestors from Modern Horizons 3. This is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human cleric with Outlast for a single white, meaning we can pay that white and tap it at sorcery speed to put a counter on it. That's not very exciting, but it's an option. Again, not bad to have some mana sinks in your deck. And it gives all of our modified creatures lifelink. Modified creatures are creatures that are equipped with equipment, that have auras attached to them that we control. We don't have to control the equipment, but we do have to control the auras. Or just, they have any counters of any kind. So in this deck, we're expecting to be putting counters on quite a few of our creatures, spreading out Betor's love, thereby giving all of those creatures with counters on them lifelink. We do have equipment as well, but yeah, lifelink on all of our modified creatures is pretty great as a repeatable source for lifelink. And again, if we're not using the Envoy to attack or block, we just outlast it every turn, and it's going to get big enough that we can start using it to attack and block, including the fact that it will gain lifelink because it itself will be modified. Next we have Halia, Guided by Light. I love this card. This is 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier that says whenever she or another creature or artifact we control enters, we gain a life. So she is another soul sister, but she works on herself and she works on artifacts. So if we have artifacts, even if they're tokens, creatures, even if they're tokens, or Halia herself, we're going to get some life gain, and that's pretty good. And if we've gained 3 or more life at the beginning of our end step, we get to draw a card. Thanks to Halia. Love her. So the chances of us drawing cards with Halia are not super low. The chances of us putting counters on things with Betor, thanks to Halia, are quite high. We can also, if we are in a little pinch for having creatures enter or for getting enough life, we can warp her in. Warp is an alternate casting cost for a single white rather than 2 and a white that says we can cast her for her warp cost, and if we do, at the end step, we will exile her, and we have permission to cast her for 2 and a white on a later turn, obviously at normal timing rules. So Halia can come in, and if we've already gained 2 life this turn, having her warp in is going to gain us 1 more life. We'll go to our end step, and no matter which order we have these triggers go, we've gained 3 life, so we're going to draw a card. But if we've already got, if we have the plan to play a creature this turn, we can have Halia warp in. We can play that creature, gain more life than just the life we gained with Halia came in. And then, if we stack it this way, we can go to our end step. Betor triggers. If we've lost life this turn, we can return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. Halia will see that, will trigger again, and will gain even more life before she warps away. Pretty good. Next up, we have Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose. An expensive card, to be sure, but a great one because he goes in so many decks. So Veto is 2 and a black for a 1/3 legendary vampire cleric that says whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So this is a bigger Blood Artist effect. It does target, like the original Blood Artist, but it does count the amount of life we gained. It's not just based on us gaining any life at all. So this is a big, sweet drain effect that we can get that will continually work every time we gain life, and we're doing that a lot. Particularly if we pay 3 and double black and give all of our creatures lifelink until end of turn. That can make for a huge attack that ends up with us getting a lot of counters thanks to Betor, but also can drain an opponent for quite a bit of life, even if they weren't the one that we attacked. But if they were the one we attacked, maybe we get to drain them for a bunch of life in addition to any damage we did. Of course, we could spread it around, attack one player with our lifelinkers, hopefully do damage to them, and then drain a different opponent based on the amount of life we gained from that attack thanks to lifelink. Nice. Veto needs more reprints, but until he gets them, probably a worthwhile cost. Next up, we have Eccentric Pest Finder. This is another new Strixhaven, Secrets of Strixhaven card, but it's from the Commander product. 2 a black and a green for a 5/5 Trampling Troll Druid. So 5/5 Trample for 4 is already lovely. And then at the beginning of each end step, if we gained life this turn, this creature becomes prepared. So we don't get to use its spell until the next turn, because it's a sorcery, but as long as we've gained any life, it becomes prepared, so this is likely going to be prepared again and again every turn if we've cast its spell during that turn already. And its spell is Turn Stones. A black and a green gives us a sorcery that says for each opponent, we make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this token dies, you gain a life. So we've got another way of gaining life, which can, of course, re-prepare the Pest Finder, but also tokens that we can use to attack, we can use to block, we can sacrifice to whatever sacrifice effects we have. Turnstones is a great way to round out our board and give us even more mana sinks that will pay us off with our life gain, which can turn into counters, which can go on the Pest Finder, which has trample and already has great stats. Yeah, a really nice little combo in our deck. Next up, we have another card I really love. It's Elegy Acolyte. This is 2 and double black for a 4/4 human cleric with lifelink that says whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card and we lose a life. Good grief. So even though it does say one or more creatures, it looks like we can only draw one card and lose 1 life. It says a player. So if we spread out our attackers and we send 1 creature at each player, assuming they get through, then each player that gets hit is going to let us draw a card and lose a life. So we can get multiple card draws and, maybe even more relevant for this deck, multiple life lost from the Elegy Acolyte's triggers. It's a possibility. Plus, if we attack with the Acolyte, lifelink, so that's a good way to gain some life. But the Elegy Acolyte also has a Void ability, which means at the beginning of our end step, if a permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell was warped this turn. So spell was warped like we cast Halia for her warp cost, or if a non-land permanent left the battlefield. It doesn't mean it has to be one of our permanents. It could be our opponent sacrificing something, even a treasure token or a clue. Like I say, it could be a token as well. Any non-land permanent leaving the battlefield, or a spell being warped, triggers this void ability at our end step, thereby creating a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Again, tokens are good for us. They can attack, they can block, they can be sacrificed, we can put counters on them with our commander. We don't mind them dying. Yeah. And if that leaves the battlefield on one of our other turns, that's a non-land permanent leaving the battlefield. So we'll be able to replace it basically right away. And maybe it does damage and we can lose a life and draw a card. Nice. Next up, we have Guillaume Master Chef. I hope I'm saying his name right. If I'm not, let me know in the comments what your favorite Guillaume deck is. This is a really cool commander from the original Commander 21 product, the original Strixhaven commander decks. 2, a green, and a black. Gives us a 5/3 trampling legendary troll warlock. So a 5/3 trampler just makes me think of a Juggernaut. He's even good. At the beginning of our end step, he says we create a number of food tokens equal to the number of non-token creatures we had to enter the battlefield under our control this turn. So a lot of non-token creatures are coming in because we have a high creature count, but we can stack Guillaume's trigger to resolve after our Betor trigger. Meaning, if Betor reanimates a creature for us, it's going to add to the number of non-token creatures that we had enter the battlefield under our control this turn, meaning we're going to get an extra food token from it. Even if not, getting 1 or 2 or 3 food every turn is pretty great, because like I said before, we can bank them to gain life if it's needful for us, or if we just want to juice the amount of life we're gaining in a turn so that Betor's instep trigger puts more counters on one of our creatures. But also, Guillaume gives us the ability to pay 1 and sack a food and make target creature indestructible until end of turn and tap it. So this is obviously a protective ability. We want to do this to protect Betor, or protect Guillaume, or protect any of our creatures that might be targeted with a destroy effect, that might die in combat, because if our creatures are attacking, they're already tapped, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't say target untapped creature. It just says we have to tap it if it's not already tapped, basically. Or if we're blocking with our creature, tapping it doesn't mean it doesn't do damage, but it will be indestructible thanks to that. So a great way to protect our creatures, even from board wipes, if we have enough mana and food, and assuming the board wipe doesn't exile or bounce or anything like that, if it's a destroy effect. But we can also use this effect politically. We can say to our opponent, hey, I know you want to attack, if opponent A wants to attack opponent B, we can say, I know you want to attack opponent B, but you don't want your creature to die in the process. We can make your creature indestructible. But what will you do for me? Will you leave me alone for a turn cycle? Can we be friends? Whatever it may be. And they'll say, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I'll go ahead and attack. Will you activate Guillaume? And we will say yes, because we made a deal. Seems good. We can also do it the other way. If opponent A attacks opponent B, we could say to opponent B, hey man, or lady, or whomever you may be, if you want to block with one of your creatures, if we can be friends, I will make your blocker indestructible. You have to block first, because my ability will tap your creature rather, so it has to be declared as a blocker first. But if you'll trust me, I will make it indestructible and save your blocker. And they might be like, oh, that's pretty good. Sounds good. So yeah, cool political choices here. We can also use this without consulting the controlling player. We can say, hey, it looks like opponent A is attacking opponent B, and if opponent B blocks, they're going to lose all their creatures, and then they're going to be out of the game, and they're the only thing stopping opponent A from attacking us. So we might choose to save their creature. Or maybe opponent A, we're like, well, we're going to choose to make their blocker or their attacker indestructible because we want that attacker to stick around to deal with opponent C, or to finish off opponent B on next turn. We can always do any of these things like that. So Guillaume giving us lots of different options, with the last one being this. Maybe we don't care about the indestructibility. Maybe we're like, I just need to tap down their creature so that it can't block when we attack, or it can't block when a different opponent attacks. Or maybe I want to tap it down prior to them attacking. Maybe they've got a Galta in play, and we're like, we don't want them to attack us with that. I don't care if it's indestructible, I care that it's tapped. So I'll sack a food prior to their declare attacker step, tap that creature down, and now it can't attack this turn cycle. And it is shields down until their next turn, until they untap with it. So yeah, lots of cool stuff Guillaume can do for us with those foods, in addition to, continuing to give us more foods that we can use to gain life and thereby empower Betor's in-step trigger. Next we have Wall of Reverence. This is 3 and a white for a 1/6 spirit wall. It has defender, and it has flying. So a flyer that can't attack but can block flyers. Also, incredible Wayne Reynolds art. Love Wayne Reynolds. It says at the beginning of our end step, we may gain life equal to the power of target creature we control. So, I was mentioning before, if we stack the triggers properly, we do have to choose the creature that we're targeting with Betor's ability if we're planning to choose a creature to get some counters on it based on the amount of life we gained. But if we have that ability, even though we choose the target when it goes on the stack, if we have that ability resolve after the Wall of Reverence end-step trigger, then we can gain even more life based on choosing the creature we control with the greatest power. And since we've gained that life, once Betor's trigger then resolves, we're going to put even more counters on one of our creatures. And if Betor happens not to be in play, that's also okay, because gaining life is pretty solid on its own. Plus we have other payoffs for our life gain. So yeah, in addition, a 1/6 flying defender is nothing to sneeze at. Next we have Erdu, Carrier of Dawn. This is a sweet card, which if you think this card is cool, especially after I've explained it, check out the video's description, because I made a commander deck around this card back during Lorem and Eclipsed being the most recent standard set, and I think it's pretty fun, so check it out. So this is 3 and double white for a 5/5 legendary elemental god with flying and lifelink. So 3 and double white for a flyer with lifelink, that's a 5/5, starting to sound like a Baneslayer Angel. And it gives all of our creature spells Convoke, meaning we can use our creatures that are already in play to tap for mana to cast those creature spells. Either a generic mana, or rather, it doesn't really tap for mana, but it taps to pay for a generic mana cost, or a cost of a mana that is one of that creature's colors. Yeah, pretty cool to be able to say, I'm going to play Erdu when I already have like 4 creatures in play, and then I'm immediately going to tap some or all of my creatures, including Erdu, to pay for the creature I had in my hand afterwards. So yeah, nice to be able to convoke that. But we also have a trigger at the beginning of our first main phase. When that happens, we can pay a black and transform Erdu into Isalu, Carrier of Twilight. Still a 5/5 legendary elemental god, still flying and lifelink, but rather than giving our creature spells Convoke, it gives all of our other non-token creatures Persist. Persist means if a creature with Persist dies, if it didn't have any -1/-1 counters on it, it comes back to the battlefield immediately with a -1/-1 counter on it. So, this is a great way to have our creatures that are not 1 toughness. I mean, even if they are 1 toughness, it's still going to happen. They will come back immediately and just have that -1/-1 counter on it. Which means if it's an X1, it's going to die again, but maybe we care about that. Maybe we have Daxos in play, and he's gaining life for us every time we have a creature enter or die. In any case, anything that doesn't have a toughness of 1 is going to have a power and toughness that's 1 less. Each is 1 less when it persists, but at least it's come back for us right away, and we get whatever other triggers may be relevant for that. In addition, our commander puts +1/+1 counters on things. And if you have a creature that has a -1/-1 counter on it because it persisted, and then we put a +1/+1 counter on it, those counters will annihilate each other and just cancel out. We'll just remove the -1/-1 counter and the +1/+1 counter. So if we put, say, 3 counters on something with a -1/-1 counter on it, it ends up having 2 +1/+1 counters all told. Which means it can now persist again, since it doesn't have any -1/-1 counters on it anymore. So by using that ability from Betor to put counters on a creature that's persisted, we can keep it persisting over and over as long as Isalu is in play. And it's not hard for us to get counters to put on those creatures, since Isalu has an evasive ability and a life-gaining ability. So we're likely to be able to gain some life during combat and put those counters on one of our persistent creatures at the end step. Maybe that creature died during the same combat, trading with something, or otherwise making an opponent's creature have a bad day. Then it persists, and we put counters on it at the end step, and we're set to go again. And at the beginning of our first main phase, if we want, we can pay a white to turn Islu back into Irdu if we'd rather have Convoke. So we've got good options either way here. Usually I stick with Islu just because Persist is so powerful and works so well with our commander's tokens ability or counters ability. But yeah, either way works. Next up, we have Gwynam, Remorseless. This is from the Spider-Man set. 3 and double black for a 4/4 legendary symbiote spider hero with Death Touch and Lifelink. Again, kind of like Evasion, especially with a 4/4 body, which means we're likely to get some lifelink, some life gain from the lifelink ability. Of course, we'll get that whether or not they block Gwynam, but in any case, what do we want to use that life for? Not only are we going to be able to use it for our commander's ability so that we can put counters on things at the end step, but whenever Gwynam attacks, until end of turn, we can look at the top card of our library at any time, and we can play spells from the top of our library, or play cards from the top of our library, I'm sorry. That means if we haven't made our land drop and there's a land on top, during our second main, we can make our land drop with that, if we wish. Nice. And if we cast a spell this way, we pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost, which is awesome. It makes Gwynam one of our life loss cards as well. So we can attack with her, maybe get some damage in, maybe kill something in the process thanks to our Death Touch, or just because Gwynam is a 4/4. But in any case, we're going to gain 4 life when she does her damage. But whether or not she does her damage or is stopped beforehand, as long as we declared her as an attacker, this ability is going to trigger, giving us the ability to play cards off the top of our library until the end of the turn, and to not have to pay mana for any spells we cast, which means we've got a way to cast spells for free in terms of mana. It is costing us life, but that lets us bring things back, which may be Gwynam if Gwynam died. But this effect is Bolas' Citadel, an incredibly powerful card. We just have to attack with Gwynam in order to make it happen in the first place. So we should attack with her every turn we can, because she's doing Death Touch damage, she's doing lifelink damage, which means we're gaining life and we're going to get to put counters on her things. And if she dies, we can probably bring her right back, as long as we just use her ability to cast at least 5 mana worth of spells, which means we've paid 5 life, which means she qualifies to come back at the end step with Betor. Now, it's possible. We look at the top card of our library, it's a land, we play it, it's another land, and we don't get to bring her back this turn. Still, a very powerful effect that we don't want to turn our nose up on. Next, we have Life Insurance from the New Capenna Commander decks. I love New Capenna, and those Commander decks are fire, so yeah, this is a really cool card. 3, a white and a black, gives us an enchantment with Extort, another Extort card, pretty good for us to use. And whenever a non-token creature dies, we lose a life and make a treasure. This does not say whenever a non-token creature you control dies. So if a board wipe happens, we might be losing, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 life, depending on what our opponents have on their boards, not to mention us, which is pretty bad, especially if it happens on, an opponent's turn, because we're not going to be able to go to our end step and get a Betor trigger and bring one of our creatures back. However, we are going to get a lot of treasures from that. And even if it's not a board wipe, there's going to be plenty of times where we lose a bunch of life and make a bunch of treasures, none of which are coming in tapped, so we can cast spells or hold on to them to cast spells later, and we've lost a bunch of life that we can then use to bring something back at our end step. Because if a non-token creature died, on our turn, it's probably because we attacked. And every time we cast spells, which probably we're going to be doing this turn if we still have cards in hand, thanks to these treasures, we just spend 1 extra treasure or 1 extra mana for a white or a black and extort every time and keep gaining life back to make up for all that life we lost. Life Insurance can really be a swingy card, but it's fun every time. I enjoy it. And besides, if you die to your Life Insurance, art imitates life. Vona, Butcher of Magan is next. This is originally a Rivals of Ixalan card. No, original Ixalan. It's Vona, an important figure in the Church of Dusk. She is 3, I believe Vona is a she. Vona is, we'll say they are a 4/4 legendary vampire knight for 3, a white, and a black with vigilance and lifelink. 4/4 vigilance and lifelink for 5 mana, pretty solid. But we can also tap Vona and pay 7 life to destroy a non-land permanent, even at instant speed. We just can only do it during our turn. So blow up anything at the cost of 7 life, and we don't get to attack with our lifelinker. Just kidding, we can attack with our lifelinker beforehand because of vigilance. And then post-combat or during combat, because it only has to be during our turn, we can tap Vona, pay 7 life. Vona is still attacking if we're still in combat. So not only does this give us a repeatable way to destroy something that isn't a land, but also a repeatable way to gain life, and a repeatable way to lose life, which lets us bring back basically anything in our graveyard. Very powerful suite of things going on with Vona. Next we have Beladros Witherbloom. This is 5, a black and a green, for a 4/4 legendary elder dragon with flying. It says, at the beginning of each upkeep, we make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, we gain 1 life. So this is the way that we gain life thanks to Beladros. We just continually make pests because it says at the beginning of each upkeep. It doesn't say at the beginning of your upkeep. So this triggers during each player's upkeep, and we're going to get a token we can block with, we can attack with, whatever we need to do, sacrifice it, and every time we do, every time they die, we're going to gain life. So pretty nice. Plus, we can just pay 10 life. I know that's a lot, but it gives us the ability to untap all lands we control, but only once each turn. Pretty good. If we want to reanimate literally anything, activating Beladros is going to let us with Betor in play, because Betor will go to our end step, Betor will let us bring back something. We don't have any creatures in this deck that cost less than 10 life, or less than 10 mana, so that 10 life didn't just give us a nice surge of mana by untapping all of our lands. It's basically a ritual, but it also gives us the ability to bring back whatever creature we want from our graveyard. Neat. Let's talk now about our life loss section. This also has 24 cards in it. I know you're wondering, why 24 if you're supposed to have, 30 cards in your game plan? Well, the reason is because there are 6 cards that cost life, or that we can pay life into, in our land base to give us 30 total cards for life loss, and 5 cards in our land base that can gain us life, putting us at 29 for life gain, plus Betor themselves, which puts us at 30 since Betor has lifelink. Thank you for attending my seminar on how the numbers all work out. We're going to start with Call of the Ring. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. And whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life, and if you do, draw a card. So let's ignore this ring part for a moment. We'll talk about that in a sec. But choosing a creature as your ring bearer, if you have any creatures in play when the ring tempts you, you're going to be doing that anyway. So essentially, as long as you have creatures in play, Call of the Ring says for 2 mana, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2 life to draw a card. So it costs 1 less than Phyrexian Arena, but costs 1 more life to get that card draw. But it's optional. So at the very least, Call of the Ring essentially says if you've got creatures in play at the start of your upkeep, you can pay 2 life, draw a card, and you're already set up for Betor to bring back a 2-drop or less during your end step. That's pretty good. But what is The Ring Tempts You? Well, The Ring Tempts You is a mechanic from the Lord of the Rings set, which gives you this emblem. So, whenever the ring tempts you, we get an emblem named the Ring. It's this emblem. If we don't already have one, that emblem gains its next ability, and we choose a creature that we control to become or remain our ring bearer. The ring can tempt us even if we don't control a creature. The ring gains its abilities top to bottom, and it will have them for the rest of the game. We have to choose a creature as our ring bearer if we control the creature, and we can only have one of these emblems each game. So the way it works is, the first time the ring tempts us, whoever is our ring bearer is legendary the whole time that they are, and they cannot be blocked by creatures with greater power. So a little bit of evasion. I didn't tag this in any ways because there's no guarantee that you will get all these parts of it, but you do get plenty of benefits. When you have your second level of the ring, then whenever your ring bearer attacks, you get to draw and discard a card. That's pretty good as card selection, but it also gives us a way to put cards in our graveyard because creatures in our graveyard are valid targets for us to reanimate with Betor. So if we draw a 1-drop creature, we can just discard it right away. And because we've probably used Slip on the Ring or our ring card to draw a card, we've already gained 2 life, so we can reanimate that small creature that we discarded. Pretty good. Third ability is whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at the end of combat. So this is almost like Death Touch. We don't even have to do damage to their creature. That creature's going to die no matter what, because their controller is going to sacrifice it, unless of course it says it can't be sacrificed for some reason. So even if they block with, an indestructible Darksteel Colossus, as long as they blocked, this trigger is going to go off, and at the end of combat, that creature's controller or that blocker's controller is going to have to sacrifice it, whether or not our creature dies, or our ring bearer. Nice. And then if we get all the way up to the top, we have all of these abilities now, or I guess the end, the bottom. Whenever our ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So we get a little nice bit of drain there, in addition to whatever damage we did. Pretty good. So Call of the Ring can do an awful lot for us. 2 mana, at the beginning of our upkeep, we will be tempted by the ring, we will choose a creature, because we have to choose a creature if we have one, and then we may pay 2 life in addition to getting whatever ring bonuses we have at that point from a ring emblem. If we play that life, not only does it set us up for our commander as in-step and bring you back a small creature, but we draw a card. Nice. Feed the Swarm is next. We'll go ahead and scroll this down. Feed the Swarm, using the new Secrets of Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing, because I love the Mystical Archive, and I love Grist, and this is featuring Grist. That's Grist right there. 1 and a black is a sorcery. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls, and you lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So typically, in a deck that is white and green, we don't need to spend a card slot for a black removal spell to kill enchantments. But killing creatures is pretty good for black. We've got plenty of uses for that in white as well, but so why are we running Feed the Swarm? Because it gives us a way on our turn, since it's sorcery speed, to lose life. In the process, we kill something and we have the chance to bring something back with our commander. Pretty great. Plus, Grist. Love Grist. Lunar Convocation is next. This is our version of Greed. Greed is a great old card in Magic. It's worth a little bit more in terms of money than Lunar Convocation. It's a little bit more efficient, but it also costs a little bit more in terms of mana. So I thought Lunar Convocation was a cool include. This is a white and a black for an enchantment that says at the beginning of our end step, if we gained life this turn, each opponent loses a life. So a little bit of drain for us. And at the beginning of our end step, if we gained and lost life this turn, then we make a bat, a 1/1 flyer. It's a black creature token. Sure, we don't mind having a nice chump blocker in the air or something else we can sacrifice. Yeah, if we gained and lost life, that's kind of what we're shooting for this deck, so we might as well have a payoff for having done both. And we can pay 1 and a black and pay 2 life to draw a card. So all we have to do is gain life some way, and we will have triggered this ability, which costs everyone else a life. And we just have to pay 1 and a black, and we've got a way to pay 2 life, which doesn't just turn on Betor, it draws us a card and means we've lost life, so if we also gained life, we make a bat too. Neat. Lots going on there. Next, another Modern Horizons 2 card. This is Priest of Fell Rites. This is white and black for a 2/2 human warlock that says tap and pay 3 life and sacrifice the priest to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, but only as a sorcery. So it's a manaless cost. It makes the priest go to our graveyard, it lets us pay 3 life, and we pay 0 mana, and we get to bring back any creature we have in the graveyard, bring it back right to the battlefield. And because we paid 3 life, and that is equal to or greater than, because it's greater than 2, we can bring the Priest of Fell Rites back right away at our end step thanks to Betor. So this can be a continual, if we have not lost enough life to reanimate something with Betor, as long as we've got the Priest of Fell Rites, we can activate it, bring something back from the graveyard that we couldn't have afforded with Betor, and then go to the end step and bring back the priest thanks to the cost we spent to activate the priest in the first place. Neat. It also has Unearth if it needed more. for 3, a white, and a black. Unearth means if we pay 3 and a white and a black while this is in the graveyard, we will return it to the battlefield, it gets haste, and at the end step we exile it, or if it would leave the battlefield, we exile it, and we can only unearth it as a sorcery. In this deck, thanks to Betor, typically we're never going to have to unearth it, because we can always bring it back at the end step that we activated it, thanks to the fact that we paid 3 life to activate it in the first place. But if we need to unearth it, not bad, we pay 5 mana, it comes back, it has haste, we can activate it immediately, and it will go to exile, but we can reanimate whatever else we need to, go to our end step, and reanimate something else that's mana value 3 or less. Pretty good. Next up, we've seen the Scheming Silvertongue. It loses us life because we can cast Sign in Blood, which draws a player 2 cards and loses them 2 life, and we can target ourselves. Next, we're running all 3 Talismans in our colors. We'll talk about Talisman of Unity as an example for them. Talismans are 2 mana artifacts that tap for colorless mana or tap for one of 2 colors. The Unity one taps for green and white, but only if we're willing to let it do 1 damage to us. So these are the classic Pain lands, but as an artifact, a 2 mana untapped mana rock. So these are great. The way I like to describe these normally is that you always tap them for colorless mana unless you need to tap them for colored mana. And if you need to tap them for colored mana, then that means, like, what makes it a need? Well, it means that it's the difference between casting a spell or not. So, would you pay a life to cast 1 extra spell on your turn? Of course you would. You would do that several times over the course of the game. If you did that 6, 7, or 8 times, that means you cast 6, 7, or 8 extra spells you wouldn't have otherwise been able to cast. Totally worth the life. And every time you don't need it for colorless or for colored mana, just tap it for colorless mana. Totally fine. For 2 mana, it comes in untapped, it does all this, love it. And in this deck, it gives us a way to guaranteed lose 1 life during our turn if we want to. Even if we don't need it for the colored mana, we can use it for the life loss, which gives us the ability to bring back some of our 1-drops or something bigger if we have other ways to lose life, like the other Talismans. So Unity, it taps for Selesnya mana, Resilience for Golgari, and Hierarchy for Orzhov. We're set up with all 3 of them, we might as well. Next up, we have a great removal spell, which I haven't been putting in decks for a long time because it didn't used to be so cheap, but thanks to Strixhaven, Secrets of Strixhaven Commander, it's less than $1. Anguished Unmaking is 1, a white, and a black for an instant that destroys a exiles a non-land permanent and costs us 3 life. So this can bring back quite a few of the things in our deck. We've got a very nice mana curve in this deck. So getting rid of something forever at instant speed, pretty good. Instant speed means we can cast it, on our opponent's turns if we want to, but if we save it and cast it on our turn, whether or not we do it at sorcery speed or instant speed, that losing 3 life is going to let us reanimate something of ours thanks to Betor. That sounds great. Next up, we have Fang Fearless L'Cie. I believe it's L'Cie. I'm not a Final Fantasy person, so let me know if you know who this person is and what their deal is. So Fang is 2 and a black for a 2/3 legendary human warrior that says whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you draw a card and lose life, but only once each turn. So typically, this is not super great to activate our commander, simply because it happens. We're going to have creatures leave our graveyard during our end step, which means we're going to lose life and draw that card during our end step when we've already had something leave the graveyard. Not terrific, but we do have some other ways to bring things back from our graveyard. For example, we saw our Priest of Felrights a moment ago. Yeah, Priest of Felrights. We can do that. Obviously, we do that at sorcery speed, so something's going to leave our graveyard, so Fang would trigger and draw us a card. And so it's a source of card draw. Even if it happens during our end step, that gets us a card. If it happens some other time during our turn, it contributes to our life loss, which is pretty great. It also melds with Vanille, Cheerful L'Cie, but we will talk about Vanille when we get to Vanille, and we'll see what's on the back of Fang. Next up, we have Glissa Sunslayer. This is 1, a black and a green for a 3/3 legendary Phyrexian zombie elf. Zombie might be relevant. Glissa has First Strike and Death Touch, so that's even better for Evasion. It means unless our opponent's blocking with a token they don't care about, or an indestructible creature, Glissa is going to do First Strike damage, which will be Death Touch damage, which is definitely going to kill anything that they block with, assuming it's not indestructible or something. or also has first strike. And yeah, so most players are going to say, sure, I'll just take the 3. And then when Glissa does combat damage to a player, we get to either draw a card and lose a life, helping us with life loss, destroy an enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from target permanent. Might not be relevant for us, but we can sure depower an opponent's creature if it has a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, or ability counters. We can depower an artifact or enchantment if they themselves have counters on them, like charge counters or something along those lines. Or if we have used Isalu to persist something, Glissa can remove up to 3 counters, which is one of the -1/-1 counters, since it should only have 1 on it. Remove that -1/-1 counter from the persisted creature, and now we don't need to put +1/+1 counters on it to get rid of those -1/-1 counters, or that -1/-1 counter, I should say. It can persist again right away if we need it to. So yeah, this last mode does have uses in this deck, but oftentimes we're using it either as removal or as a source of life loss and, of course, card draw. I know you're noticing a lot of our life loss, when it's one at a time, comes with free cards. Yeah. And everything else is, even more value. Like, we lose some life, but we gain some mana. We lost 2 life, but we drew 2 cards. We lost 3 life, but we got to get rid of the worst thing on the battlefield that wasn't ours. At least if it wasn't a land. So yeah. I mentioned Phyrexian Arena a little bit ago. We've got it. It's 1 and double black for an enchantment that says at the beginning of our upkeep, we draw a card and lose a life. That simple. Start every turn down 1 life, meaning the ability to redraw, or reanimate rather, something that's at least mana value 1, assuming that's, depending on how much total life we lose during that turn. It's already online, and we have an extra card in hand. Yeah, solid. Next up, we have Toxic Deluge. This is a board wipe that I rarely ever use, simply because it's been a little expensive for quite a long time, but it's very powerful, and it's great in our deck. For 2 and a black, we get a sorcery that says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, pay X life, and then all creatures get -X/-X until end of turn. So we just kill everything. That's really what this is. We pay as much life as we want to probably kill everything in play. We can pay just 4 life, and that will usually kill most things, but it won't kill Betor, because Betor is a 3/5. So that we can then bring back the thing that is mana value 4 or less that we like most from our graveyard, whether it was already there or whether it died from Toxic Deluge. But if we need to kill things that are bigger than Betor, we can also kill Betor, and that's totally fine. It may be the case that we cast Toxic Deluge before Betor even comes into play, meaning if we have the mana to cast Betor after Toxic Deluge, we can then just bring back whatever we want to from the graveyard with Betor, thanks to the life that we've lost that turn. Pretty sweet. Next up, we have Yathan Tomeguard, or Yathan, not really sure the provenance of this word, but it's from Tarkir Dragonstorm. 2 and a black for a 2/3 human warrior that has menace, and whenever a creature we control with a counter on it deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card and we lose a life. So kind of similar to the Elegy Acolyte, but it doesn't have a limit to 1 or more creatures. It's each creature we attack with that gets to do combat damage to a player. As long as those creatures had counters on them, we draw a card for each one of those creatures and lose a life for each one. So we can kind of titrate exactly where we want our life loss to be, just depending on what the blocking situation is. Plus, we get all those cards. We've seen the Elegy Acolyte, lets us lose some life and draw a card whenever 1 or more of our creatures deals combat damage to a player. We haven't seen Pact Weapon. This is such a cool card. 3 and a black for an equipment that equips for discard a card. So, like I was saying before with our discarding, this is great. It lets us put, hopefully, a creature into our graveyard that we're going to be able to reanimate with Betor. Then, as long as this equipment is attached to a creature, we don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. So everything we were afraid of with life insurance, don't need to worry about it. Let us lose as much life as we want. As long as our creature stays alive and Pact Weapon stays attached, we don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. It's generally a little bit of protection that we want to try and gain some life back if we can, so we're not in danger here, but at least it gives us that ability. More importantly though, whenever the equipped creature attacks, we get to draw a card and reveal it, and then the equipped creature gets a power and toughness bonus equal to that card's mana value, and we lose that much life. So we don't have the ability to control this very well unless we have a way to peek at the top of our library, which we've already seen with Gwenom. And of course, that's only going to happen when Gwynnm attacks, and this equipped creature is also going to be attacking, so yeah. Not the best way to peak, but it does give us the ability to have a little bit of a bonus on our creature, and if that creature happens to have lifelink, we're going to gain that life back, or more than that life, because we'll lose an amount equal to the card we revealed, but we'll gain an amount back equal to the card we revealed plus the power of that creature once it does its lifelink damage. Plus, we get to draw that card, and we've lost life, so we're going to be able to get Betor's second half of their triggered ability online. So everything on this card does something for us. Puts cards in our graveyard, keeps us alive if we happen to get a little bit too low, gives us a bonus, draws a card, loses us life. Yeah, love this card. Next up we have Vicious Rivalry, our other board wipe. 2, a black and a green for a sorcery that, as an additional cost, we pay X life. So it's the same as Toxic Deluge, except it costs an extra green. Well, what do we get for that? We get to destroy all artifacts and creatures with mana value X or less. So this is based on the mana value rather than on just giving a penalty to power and toughness, but it also hits artifacts. So we can do something similar to this with what I was saying with Toxic Deluge. If we have 4 life that we pay, we can kill everything mana value 4 or less and destroy all the artifacts mana value 4 or less as well. That seems great. We still don't lose Betor, and we get to put something back in our hand at the end of turn, assuming it's got mana value 4 or less, because that's how much life we spent. But of course, we can spend more to kill more things. Yeah, Vicious Rivalry seems really cool. Another cool Secrets of Strixhaven card for us. Next, we have Doom Whisperer. This card is, I guess I'm not surprised that it costs as much as it does, because it was amazing back in Ravnica 3, Guilds of Ravnica. So 3 and double black for a 6/6 flying, trampling nightmare demon. It flamples. That's already great, but if we pay 2 life, we get to surveil 2. So this is just instant speed, keep surveilling. That can set us up for something nice on top of our library with Gwynnm, or of course with Pact Weapon. But more importantly, it lets us pay as much life as we want at instant speed, so during our turn, if we need to reanimate something, we're going to be able to with Betor. We can pay all the life that we need to. Very powerful. Next, we've already seen Gwynnm. Lets us pay life to cast spells from the top of our library. Life insurance loses us life whenever non-token creatures die, but we also can make treasure, and we can use it to extort. Marshland Bloodcaster is next. This is a little bit of a late addition to the deck, but it's a very cool one. 4 and a black for a 3/5 Vampire Warlock with flying. So 3/5 flyer for 5, that's our commander, already cool. And we can pay 1 and a black and tap the Bloodcaster, and then rather than pay the mana cost of the next spell we cast this turn, we can pay life equal to that spell's mana value. So we are kind of having to pay the 2 in order to cast it. So if we're casting something mana value 2, really this is just saying pay an additional 2 life to cast that thing. But paying life is good for us because it turns Betor on, so we get to, or the second half of Betor's trigger on, so we get to use Marshland Bloodcaster as a great way to maybe ramp sometimes, but also ensure we have a way to lose life and to choose what amount of life we're going to be losing based on the cards we have in hand that we can cast. Pretty neat. Also, it does say the next spell you cast this turn. So if we have ways to cast spells that aren't just straight from our hand, it does apply to those. We've seen Vona. Vona lets us pay 7 and tap to destroy an online permanent during our turn. We haven't seen Infernal Sovereign. This is 4 and double black for a 6/6 demon with flying, trample, and skip your draw step. So we already know we're doing some crazy stuff here. A 6/6 Flampler for 6 that doesn't let us draw cards in our draw step anymore. What are we doing here? Well, whenever we play a land or cast a spell, we draw a card and lose a life. It's so risky and so much fun. Just so much card advantage. A lot of ways for us to sort of meter the amount of life that we're gaining or the life that we're losing. And hopefully most of these spells that we're casting are going to gain us life to make up for the life we lose. But being able to just keep drawing and drawing and drawing whenever we play lands and cast spells, that's very cool. Finally, we've already seen Beledr's Witherbloom, not only gaining us life from the pests that it makes, but also letting us pay 10 life to untap all of our lands. That's a lot of mana, but it gets back anything we could possibly have in our graveyard creature-wise. So that covers our life loss section and therefore the major parts of our game plan. Oh, hey, did you just like the video? Nice, thank you very much. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video if you don't want. I appreciate you being here with me either way. Of course, I would appreciate the like, but it's up to you. Anyway, that covers our game plan. So let's talk now about the ways that we support our game plan, starting with our card advantage section, which as usual, I've tagged as draw. Doesn't mean all these cards actually do the draw a card action. It's just ways for us to get card advantage and have a shorthand to refer to them. So Call of the Ring lets us draw a card during our upkeep when the ring tempts us and we choose a creature as a ring bearer if we pay 2 life. Lunar Convocation can let us pay 1 and a black and 2 life to draw a card. Scheming Silvertongue lets us cast Sign in Blood, hopefully every turn. Fang draws us a card and loses us a life whenever one or more cards of ours leave our graveyard. Glissa can have us draw a card and lose a life when she does combat damage to a player. Halia can draw us a card at our end step if we've gained 3 or more life this turn. Phyrexian Arena draws us an extra card during our upkeep, costs us a life though. Yathan Tombguard also draws us a card and loses us a life each time one of our creatures with counters on them do combat damage to a player. Elegy Acolyte, of course, does something similar, but it's 1 or more creatures. Pact Weapon lets us draw a card as part of the attack of the equipped creature. Gwenum gives us access to the cards on top of our library. We can cast them and play lands if we have a land. And Infernal Sovereign draws us a card and loses us a life every time we play a land or cast a spell. And we skip our draw step, so kind of working against our drawing cards, but does a lot more than that. So yeah, that's our card advantage section. Next comes our ramp section, or rather acceleration, just tagged as ramp. Soul Ring is where we start. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. You know Soul Ring. You want to run Soul Ring, it goes in your deck, put it in your deck. Arcane Signet is pretty similar. It's 2 generic mana for an untapped artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white, black, or green. A 2 mana untapped rock that makes all of our colors. This is great. Of course we're going to run this. We've also got Farseek. Farseek is the rampant growth for our deck. It's 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Because it does not say basic, then we can look for a non-basic plains or non-basic swamp. Obviously there's no islands and mountains in this deck, and we could put it into play. Because mostly our deck is black, we're probably going to find a dual-typed swamp, since we have a number of typed duals in this deck. And since it comes in tapped anyway, we can probably find, something that would have also come in tapped and can either be a swamp and plains if we need white, or a swamp and forest if we need green, and we're set either way. Of course, we could just find a plains that's also a forest, whichever one we want to do. Farseek will let us do it. Felwar Stone is sort of the opposite of Arcane Signet. It's 2 generic mana for an artifact that comes in untapped and taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So this is pretty cool. It gives us the ability to, if all of our opponents are playing red, blue, or both, and nothing else, or just colorless, I guess, then Felwar Stone taps for mana that we can only use for colorless, for a generic mana cost, and that's also fine. But if anyone in our commander game is playing green, then it's an untapped green source, and that's pretty great. If someone's running white and black, then it taps for those as well. If someone's playing a chromatic lantern, making all of their lands tap for any color, then our Felwar Stone can tap for any color. Pretty good for us. Gallic Raiders, we've already seen, lets us make a tapped treasure token when we have a creature enter. Sakura Tribal Elder we haven't gotten to see. This is Steve, 1 and a green for a 1/1 Snake Shaman that says, sacrifice this creature to rampant growth. Search your library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So the reason Steve is in this deck is because it is so easy to reanimate Steve with Betor. Being able to pull Steve back into play after we've sacrificed him, just great. Because he rampant growths us, but also costs the same as rampant growth. So we play him on our turn, and as long as we've lost 2 life during that turn, we can sacrifice him this turn and get him back immediately that same turn with Betor, use him to block on an opponent's turn. Before damage, assuming the attacker doesn't have trample, we sacrifice him again, and we can get him back during our next end step if we want to. But we've already gotten 2 basic lands into play off of him, which is rampant growth mana for an explosive vegetation. So that's already very good. And then every turn we don't have anything better to reanimate, we get back Steve. Or every turn we need land, we get back Steve. He helps us every time. Love this guy. We've seen our 3 talismans. Hierarchy, Resilience, and Unity all help us out. Next we have White of the Reliquary, originally a Modern Horizons 3 card. This is a black and a green for a 2/2 zombie knight with vigilance that gets +1/+1 for each creature card in our graveyard. So it may not get that big in this deck, but sometimes we have a number of creatures go to the graveyard, and we sort of got to wait in the Congo line for Betor to reanimate them one by one, so this can get quite big. And we can tap it and sack another creature to search our library for a land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. It does not say a basic land, so this is not Rampant Growth, it's better. We can find any land we need, which is pretty good for us because we have lands that we can tap and lose life with. We have lands that will enter and gain us life. We have ways to work with our commander's instep trigger, and White of the Reliquary can help us get those lands whenever we need to. So just a nice acceleration piece, a way to put creatures in our graveyard that we might want to be able to reanimate, and it gets better for those creatures and attacks vigilantly. Pretty great. We've seen Erdu. Erdu can let us convoke our creatures out on the front side. Life Insurance makes us treasures and loses us life whenever non-token creatures die. Marshland Bloodcaster, we can pay 2 and tap to pay life instead of mana for the next spell we cast that turn. Pretty good. And also, that doesn't say activate only as a sorcery, so we can do this on our opponent's turns if we need to, assuming we have a card that we can play at instant speed. And of course, Beladros, we can pay 10 life and untap all of our lands once each turn. That's still a huge ritual for us. So yeah, pretty good. That is our acceleration section. Let's talk now about interaction. Again, just tagged as removal. So we've seen Haywire Might. We can sack it in order to exile a non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment, and when it dies, we gain 2 life. We're running Path to Exile and Source to Plowshares. Both of these cards are pretty similar, but with one difference. They're both instants that cost a single white mana and exile a target creature and give that creature's controller a kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller Rampant Growth. So both of these are extremely powerful, basically unconditional, single mana, instant speed exile effects for creatures. Yeah, love them. Feed the Swarm can kill a creature or an enchantment and cost us life. That helps us. Heliod's Intervention can gain us twice X life or destroy X artifacts and or enchantments. Sorin on the backside can -1 and do damage based on the number of life we've gained this turn to any target. That's creatures or it goes face. Anguished Unmaking exiles an on-land permanent, also costs us 3 life. Emergency Eject is next. This is my answer to a lot of people like to run Generous Gift or Beast Within, which can hit any permanent and destroy it, and it leaves a 3/3 creature with that permanent's controller. Typically, the kind of decks that I build are of a power level that usually the pods that want these kind of decks don't look too happily at land destruction. Mana denial is something that most people, or a lot of people at least, don't want to see at their commander games. So why run Generous Gift or Beast Within when you can run Stroke of Midnight, which is the same spell, except it only hits non-land permanents and leaves them a 1/1. To which I say, why run that and give them a creature at all when you can run Emergency Eject? All of this is just a long case for why Emergency Eject is underplayed. This is 2 and a white for an instant that destroys any non-land permanent, so we don't need to hit lands anyway, so we need a flexible 3 mana removal spell. Emergency Eject does it for us, and it leaves that permanent's controller with a Lander token. A Lander token is a Wayfarer's Bauble. It's an artifact that if they pay 2, tap it, and sack it, they get to do a Rampant Growth of their own. So they have to pay for it, and it comes in tapped, and it's after they've had their other permanent destroyed. So yes, Path to Exile is much better because it only costs 1 mana and it exiles something, but it can only hit creatures and it does the Rampant Growth thing for them. Emergency Eject makes them pay for their own Rampant Growth and it hits any non-land permanent. You understand. If you disagree with me as to why this is so good, let me know in the comments below. I am happy to disagree with someone. Yeah. So we've seen all but one of the rest of these. Vona, we can tap and pay 7 to destroy an online permanent. Glissa can destroy enchantments when she does combat damage to a player. And Fang, well, it doesn't look like it does any removal. But here's that vanilla that we were talking about. 3 and a green for a 3/2 legendary human cleric that says when vanilla enters, we mill 2 cards and then return a permanent from our graveyard to our hand. Well, that's a graveyard card and a recursion card. It lets us regrow something, as long as it's a permanent, and it lets us put cards in our graveyard that we may be able to reanimate with Betor. Both of those are good, but how is this a removal spell? Well, Vanille says at the beginning of our first main phase, if we both own and control Vanille and a creature named Fang Fearless Lassie, we can pay 3 a black and a green, and if we do, we exile them both and meld them into Ragnarok Divine Deliverance. Meld is a mechanic by which you flip both cards on their back and put them together. One's the top and one's the bottom, and you get this huge, awesome thing. This is Ragnarok Divine Deliverance, a 7/6 legendary beast avatar with Vigilance, Menace, Trample, Reach, and Haste. So you can do this all at the beginning of your first main phase, of course. And you get a 7/6 Vigilant, Menace, and Trample hasty Reacher. So yeah, it's got Vigilance, so it can block. It can block in the air. It's got Menace and Trample, a double whammy of evasion. Just a lot going on. And look at this crazy art. It's crazy. And it says, when Ragnarok dies, destroy target permanent and return target non-legendary permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this dies. Both Vanille and Fang are going to be in the graveyard when it dies. So then this ability is going to go on the stack. We can destroy target non-land permanent, that's our removal, and return target non-legendary permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Which means we cannot return Vanille or Fang because they're both legendary. But we can return anything else we want to, as long as it's non-legendary, including a land, if we've got a land in our graveyard, which maybe we do because we maybe milled it, and we get to just bring something back and blow something up. And now, Vanille and Fang are both in our graveyard, so that we can go to our end step, and assuming we've lost 3 or 4 life that turn, we can go ahead and reanimate one of them with Betor. Reanimate the next one the next turn. Maybe the turn after that, we do the thing again. Pay the 5 and turn them back into Ragnarok. Seems fun. I just like meld pairs, and this seems like an interesting one to put in this deck, so yeah, works for me. That covers our interaction section. We have already seen both of our Wraths, but let's take a look at them right here. Toxic Deluge and Vicious Rivalry are both spells that, as an additional cost, we pay any amount of life. Toxic Deluge will give that amount of life that we paid as -X/-X to all creatures. Vicious Rivalry will destroy all artifacts and creatures with mana value equal to the amount we paid. So yeah, both different things that we can do in pretty similar ways, and if we go with the thing I mentioned before, where we pay 4 life so it doesn't kill Betor, then we're going to be able to probably bring something of ours back that same turn, thanks to having paid 4 life, assuming we've got something in the graveyard at the end of turn that is mana value 4 or less. So that covers our Wraths and our support section. We have a number of additional sections that are meant to supplement our game plan and sort of tag out all the other cards that we've seen. We're going to start with our payoff section. These are all cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway. So Children of Corliss rewards us for losing life because it gains us life based on the amount of life we've lost. We haven't seen Comforting Counsel yet. This is 1 and a green for an enchantment. This says whenever you gain life, put a growth counter on this enchantment. Growth counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. And then, as long as there are 5 or more growth counters on this enchantment, creatures you control get +3/+3. So a permanent giant growth on all of our creatures, as long as Comforting Counsel is in play with 5 or more growth counters on it. And Willow Dusk is featured here. Willow Dusk, the commander from the original Commander 21's Strixhaven Witherbloom deck. Anyway, this is a really cool function here. We are going to be gaining quite a bit of life. We might even have a turn where we gain life 5 times, the same turn we've played Comforting Counsel. And so it just makes all of our creatures huge all the time, and that's really powerful. Plus, +3 to all of our lifelinkers can make a huge difference over the course of just a few turns. Lunar Convocation cares about us gaining life and losing life. Scheming Silvertongue cares about us gaining 2 or more life before our second main phase. Sorin wants us to gain 3 or more life during our turn so we can flip him into the Planeswalker side. Breathless Night wants our creatures to enter from the graveyard, including itself. Fang wants our creatures to leave our graveyard. We haven't seen Moseo yet. Moseo, another very cool card, and if I may mention, another card that I made a commander deck out of just a week or two ago. So check the video's description if you want a link to my Moseo Vane's Nudine deck. This is 2 and a black for a 2/1 legendary bird skeleton warlock with flying that says, when Moseo enters, we make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token, though this is a different kind of pest than Beldros Witherbloom makes, because it says whenever this token attacks rather than dies, we gain a life. This is, Moseo has a pet skeleton pest. I don't remember what her name is, Renata maybe? Something along those lines? Anyway, that's what this token is. And Moseo has an infusion ability. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. So, pretty sweet, because this is the same as what Betor does. So this is a bonus Betor, second half of Betor's trigger on Moseo. Neat, bring back multiple things. Twilight Diviner is next. We also haven't seen this one. This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 elf cleric from Lord Eclipsed that says when it enters, we surveil 2. Surveil doesn't just mean we get a little selection on top of our library. It also means we can put cards in our graveyard, which is something we can use to reanimate with Betor, or I guess Moseo, or any of our other reanimation effects. And whenever one or more other creatures we control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, so we're doing sort of a Breathless Night kind of thing here, if that happens, create a token that's a copy of one of them, but only once each turn. So at every one of our end steps, assuming this hasn't already happened, we're going to get something back, assuming we've lost life and Betor's in play, etc. And when we bring that thing back, we can make a copy of it. So we get a bonus token that's the same as something we brought back. Now, if that thing we brought back is legendary, we're going to lose that legendary copy, presumably. I don't think we probably want to lose the one that is the original, although we could put it back in the graveyard, that's fine. Might be relevant for our triggers. Maybe if one of our things dies, we get a nice trigger from Daxos or any one of our other cards that cares about that. But yeah, Twilight Diviner can help us out by doubling up on some of our creatures. We've already seen Veto. Veto cares about us gaining life, causing a target opponent to lose that much life. Yathan Tomb Guard cares about us doing combat damage to players with creatures that have counters on them, cares about us having counters on our creatures. Eccentric Pest Finder cares about us having gained life at all, because becomes prepared to our end step if we did. Guillaume cares about us having non-token creatures enter, and rewards us with food for that. And we haven't seen Sir Conrad. Sir Conrad the Grim is 3 and double black for a 5/4 legendary human knight that says Sir Conrad deals damage to each opponent when one of 3 things happens. Either whenever another creature dies, doesn't say creatures that we control, a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield. Again, doesn't say our graveyard or a creature that we control. So any creature that dies or gets milled or gets discarded or any other way that creatures go to the graveyard, Sir Conrad will trigger and do a damage to each opponent. Or if a creature leaves our graveyard. This is the only one that cares about only our graveyard. But when that happens, which we're going to be trying to do as much as we can with our commander, Sir Conrad's going to do 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a very powerful Blood Artist. That's a 5/4 body for 5, and it's a little bit of a removal magnet. So if people are using removal on Sir Conrad, they're probably not using it on Betor or any of our other creatures, and no big deal if they do, because we can just bring him back from the graveyard assuming he died. Plus, for 1 and a black, we can have each player mill a card, which doesn't just put a card in our graveyard that hopefully we can reanimate, but also it means if any of those cards that were milled by any player are creature cards, then a creature card was put into a graveyard from somewhere other than the battlefield, and Sir Conrad will do a damage to each opponent for each of those creatures that was. Neat. That covers our payoffs. Let's talk now about our synergy section. These are all cards that, rather than rewarding us for what we were going to do already, they help us out and care about what we were doing. So for example, White of the Reliquary gets +1/+1 for each creature card in our graveyard. Envoy of the Ancestors we've already seen. It's 2 and a white for a 2/3 human cleric with Outlast for a white that gives our modified creatures lifelink. So it cares about our creatures that have counters on them. Similarly, Abzan Falconer is 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier with Outlast for 1 that gives all of our creatures with 1/1 counters on them flying. So whereas The Envoy makes all of our modified creatures into a source of life gain to put counters on things with our Betor instep trigger. Whenever we do put those counters on things, however we do, but especially with Betor, Abzan Falconer is going to make them fly. So that's a great version of evasion for us, so we can swing in without having to worry about ground defenders. And it also means that since we're putting counters on our creatures with Betor, oftentimes it's going to be our biggest creature, since they've got counters on them that have flying. So Abzan Falconer helps us a lot. We've seen Urdu. The reason it's in this section is because Isalu gives our creatures that aren't tokens persist. And of course, we've seen how persist functions with counters, with 1/1 counters, so that they can cancel out. That's a cool synergy there. We also have Tayam Luminous Enigma. This is 1, a white, a black, and a green for a 3/3 legendary nightmare beast that says each other creature you control enters with an additional vigilance counter on it. Meaning, it comes in with an ability counter. It doesn't give it any sort of bonus to power and toughness, but it does give it the vigilance ability, which is pretty sweet, and is a counter. So Envoy of the Ancestors gives that creature with the vigilance counter lifelink, if it's in play as well. Neat. Tayam is in this section, however, because if we pay 3 and remove 3 counters from among creatures we control. So we can remove those vigilance counters, but also just any of our 1/1 counters if we want to. Or even -1/-1 counters if we've had things persist thanks to Isalu. Any counters we have, as long as we remove 3 of them and pay 3 mana, Tayam lets us mill 3 cards and then return a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So, not only are we able to return a permanent card, mana value 3 or less, from our graveyard, not just those 3 milled cards, but also, once we return that permanent, we've probably milled at least 1 other permanent, maybe even a creature, that we can use to bring back with Betor. So this helps us out both by filling our graveyard, bringing something back, giving our creatures vigilance, and giving us something we can use our counters for beyond just, making our things big. That is our synergy section. Let's go now to our drain section. These are all the cards that cause our opponents to just lose life. We've seen all of these already. Basilica Screecher, Sorin, and Life Insurance all have Extort. Elazil Core causes our opponents to each lose a life whenever one of our creatures dies, besides Elas themselves. Lunar Convocation has each opponent lose a life at the beginning of our instep if we gained life this turn. Cauldron of Essence is a Blood Artist, so each opponent loses a life and we gain a life whenever a creature we control dies. Veto has target opponent lose life equal to the amount of life we gained every time we gain life. And Sir Conrad doesn't cause life loss, but does do 1 damage whenever any creatures die, go to the graveyard from somewhere other than the battlefield, or one of our creatures leaves a graveyard. So, leaves our graveyard, I should say. So, that is our drain section. Let's talk now about all of our death triggers, just to notice that we have a bunch of triggers, cards that trigger when things die. Daxos gains us life when things die. Elazil Core drains our opponents when things die. Cauldron of Essence does both, drains our opponents and gains us life. Fang cares about us. It is a death trigger, I'm sorry, because of Ragnarok. When Ragnarok dies, we can destroy a target permanent and return a non-legendary permanent from our graveyard to the battlefield. That is why both Fang and Vanille are in this section. Took me a moment. Elegy Acolyte isn't exactly a death trigger, but at our instep, it cares if a non-land permanent left the battlefield, or if a spell was warped. So it's like if something died. It's sort of a morbid trigger, ++, and it will make us a 2/2 robot. Life Insurance, whenever a non-token creature dies, ours or anyone else's, we lose a life and make a treasure. And of course, Sir Conrad is going to do a damage to everyone when creatures die or go to the graveyard from somewhere other than the battlefield, or a creature leaves our graveyard, as we've said. So that covers our death triggers section. Let's talk about how things, where things go when they trigger our death triggers. We've seen all these already. These are all cards that put cards in our graveyard. So Children of Corliss can sacrifice itself, putting itself in the graveyard. Hopefully we can bring it back pretty quick. Wide of the Reliquary lets us sack a creature to put a land from our graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. Cauldron of Essence lets us sack a creature in order to reanimate another creature. Twilight Diviner can put cards in the graveyard because it lets us surveil when it comes in. Packed Weapon lets us put cards in the graveyard because in order to equip it, we have to discard a card. Tayam lets us mill 3 when we activate its activated ability. Vanille enters and mills us 2 and lets us return a permanent from our graveyard to our hand. And Sir Conrad, we can pay 1 in a black and each player mills a card. Those are our graveyard cards. Here is our recursion section. It's pretty robust for this deck, but again, we've seen all of these. Priest of the Fell Rites, if we activate it, can bring any creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield. Cauldron of Essence can also bring any creature back from the graveyard to the battlefield, as long as we sacrifice a creature. Of course, Priest sacrifices itself. Fang and Vanille are in the section because we can reanimate a non-legendary permanent when Ragnarok dies. Moseo has a similar, or almost the same, basically, trigger, at our end step that our commander does, at least the reanimation part. Tayam can let us bring a permanent converted mana cost 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield when we activate its activated ability. And Irdu, on Isalu's side, has our creatures persist, so that's a kind of recursion. That is our recursion section. Let's talk about evasion now. We've already seen Abzan Falconer lets our creatures with counters on them fly, but now Champion of Lambholt from Evasion Restored. This is 1 and double green for a 1/1 human warrior that says creatures with power less than this creature's power can't block creatures you control. Let's hit that again. Any creatures our opponents control that have power less than the champion's power are unable to block all of our creatures, not just the champion. So as long as the Champion of Lambholt is big enough, our creatures are unblockable by an opponent's creatures. It just matters how big the champion's power is compared to each creature our opponent controls. And whenever another creature we control enters, whether it's because we cast them, because we reanimated them, or brought them back with Betor as our reanimation, whatever it may be, we put a 1/1 counter on Champion of Lambholt. So the champion can get really big, and we can make it even bigger if we gain life using Betor to put counters on it. Then it's just so huge that we wait till our next turn and we swing in with it and everything else, and some of our opponents won't be able to block anything. This is a great card that can alpha strike out of nowhere, and if players haven't played against it before, it doesn't look like a bomb, so they may not notice it. And if they do notice it, well, then it's removal bait. Just like Sir Conrad that we've seen before, if our opponents are using the removal to get rid of Champion of Lambholt, that means they're not using it on things like Betor or some of our better creatures. Yeah, this is a real feast or famine card, which kind of goes with our theme. That is our evasion section. Let's talk now about our protection section. We've got 2 cards we've seen. Guillaume can protect our creatures by making them indestructible when we sacrifice a food to him. Pact Weapon can protect us because we don't lose the game when we have 0 or less life. That's kind of cool. We're also running Selfless Spirit. This is 1 and a white for a 2/1 Flying Spirit Cleric that says sacrifice this creature, and creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn. Pretty cool. Honestly, this should be in our graveyard section. I'll go ahead and put it there right now. I don't normally do this, but because it can put itself in the graveyard, it belongs in that section. In any case, Selfless Spirit can make all of our creatures indestructible. And then it's in the graveyard, so that during our next end step, as long as we've just lost 2 life, Selfless Spirit, we can bring it right back with Betor, and then it can protect our creatures again. Very cool. Finally, we've got the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1, and it makes the equipped creature hexproof and have haste. So haste can be great for a lot of our flyers, especially if we put this on like Irdu. We've suddenly got a hasty flying lifelinking 5/5. That's very cool. But honestly, we're usually using this for our hexproof ability because it protects our commander. That's a big deal. It's also worth noting that Pact Weapon and Swiftfoot Boots are both equipment. So they are both modifications. So our Envoy of the Ancestors, even if our creatures that are equipped don't have counters on them, those creatures will still have lifelink. So it's like the Swiftfoot Boots gives hexproof, haste, and lifelink. Pretty neat. That is our payoff section, our protection section. Next we've got Pump, which is right here. We've seen both of these already. Pact Weapon can make our creature that's equipped with it bigger each turn, and Comforting Counsel makes all of our creatures bigger by +3/+3 once it has 5 or more growth counters on it, which is not hard for us to do in this deck. So that covers Pump. And finally, I just wanted to show all of the ways that we can make tokens in this deck. There's not that many of them, but many of them do repeat. For example, Lunar Convocation. At the beginning of each of our end steps when we've gained and lost life, we get a 1/1 Flying Bat. Moseo comes with a 1/1 Green Pest that gains us life when it attacks. Twilight Diviner can make copies of our creatures when they come back from the graveyard, once each turn, and only 1 at a time, but still. Eccentric Pest Finder makes the old kind of pests, which are 1/1 black and green creatures that, when they die, they gain us life. Beldur's Witherbloom also makes those old type of pests at the beginning of each upkeep. And Elegy Acolyte can make us some 2/2 robots as long as the void condition is met at our instant. That covers our tokens and therefore all of our spells. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basic lands. So we're running 3 forests, 3 plains, and 3 swamps. Of course, all Tarkir Dragonstorm printings. Not relevant, but I like to always match it to my commander if I can. If we wanted to make these lands more proportional to our colors in our deck, we could go heavier on swamps, maybe go down to 2 forests and 2 plains, or even 1 forest. But I don't like to do like 1-ofs and, if I can help it, 2-ofs for basics. I want to make sure I always have good opportunities to cast my spells of even the minority colors, and we have plenty of basic, of black sources in this deck. So I think this is the optimal mix, but of course you can tweak it however you like. 3, 3, 5, so that's 11 basics, very low for the decks that I typically build. But let's keep going. We've got all of our bicycle lands in this deck. We'll use the new Umbral Expanse as our example. This is a plains and a swamp, and it enters tapped. So it's got dual types, and therefore taps for black or white, but it means it is something we can find with Farseek, because it's a plains and a swamp. Similarly, if we were to do Scattered Groves, it is a forest. Farseek doesn't say it can find forests, but it can sure find plains, so Scattered Groves would be able to come in tapped anyway with Farseek, and that's pretty good. Or we can take this card and it has cycling 2, meaning we can pay 2 and discard it from our hand to draw a card. Something we might do if we're desperate for a card, or if it's late game and we've drawn this and we really don't need any more lands, we can turn it in for a different card, put it in our graveyard. So the bicycle lands are all great because they give us those options for cycling, but are also going to fix our mana pretty well and are dual typed. If you wanted to upgrade a bicycle land, I might say try a shock land. They're much more expensive, and they don't have the ability to cycle, but they are dual-typed lands that could come in untapped, and that's pretty powerful. We're running all 3 of our check lands as well. We'll use Isolated Chapel as our example. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a plains or a swamp, and it taps for white or black, so the corresponding colors to those basic types. So while we only have a few plains and swamps in the deck that are basic, Isolated Chapel does not say basic plains or swamp, which means each one of our bicycle lands will make Isolated Chapel come in untapped, because this is a swamp, this is a plains, and this is both. So I don't like to run the check lands in my decks unless I have at least 18 sources of basic typed lands. We are running 11 of our basics. We've got all 3 bicycle lands, and as you'll soon see, all 3 tango lands, which puts us to 17, but we do have 1 more land that's special for this deck that happens to have a basic type, so that gets us to just 18, and there you go. The check lands are much less expensive than my upgrade recommendation, which is the Verge lands. Those are very powerful, and also sort of like a check land, but also much more expensive. Here are our fixing lands. Of course, we're running Command Tower. It is an untapped land with the same text as Arcane Signet, so it taps for white, black, or green in this deck, thereby making it an untapped tri-land, which is extremely powerful. Of course, we're going to run that. We would run this if it were a tap land, like Path of Ancestry. Path of Ancestry comes in tapped and has the same text as Command Tower, but it also says, when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry one. So not only does that mean, obviously, our commander shares types with itself, our commander is a spirit dragon. We have 1 other dragon in this deck, and 3 other spirits in this deck. So a total of 5 cards in this deck, 5 creatures, will get us a scry with Path of Ancestry, one of which is our commander, so we're definitely going to see that. And in any case, even tapped, it makes all of our colors. Love it. We've got Exotic Orchard as well, which, if Command Tower is the land version of Arcane Signet, this is the land version of Felwar Stone. Taps for 1 mana of any color a land an opponent controls could produce, and it comes in untapped. So this is great. Again, we can make all the colors our opponents make. If they can make our colors, we can do that. If they've got like a chromatic lantern or something along those lines, we can make any color we need. And if they've got their own Exotic Orchard, then our Exotic Orchard sees their Exotic Orchard, which sees our other lands, which means our Exotic Orchard taps for any color that our lands could produce. Pretty neat. We're running Blighted Woodland. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, but if we pay 3 and a green, tap it, and sack it, we get to Explosive Vegetation, which is a double rampant growth. We search our library for 2 basics, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So normally, I like to put Myriad Landscape in my decks, but Myriad Landscape comes in tapped, and it can only find 2 basics of the same type, but it does only cost 2 and tap and sack to activate. Blighted Woodland costs twice as much in order for us to activate it, and includes green, which is our least represented color, but it does come in untapped. And in this deck, we've got a lot of low mana spells, so being able to ramp with this a little late, but still accelerating because it's 1 land drop that becomes 2, is still very powerful for us, especially since we can tap it for mana the first turn it comes in. Pretty good. Similarly, I know not everyone likes Temple of the False God, but it's an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. It's a soul land. It just can't tap for mana at all unless we have at least 4 other lands in play, so 5 or more including itself. And so, even though this is not acceleration that we can use early game, we can sure use it mid and late game, and more mana is always great, especially when you have a 5 mana commander. I think this is terrific for these kinds of decks. Next up, we're running all 3 gain lands. Don't usually run the gain lands in my decks, but these are tap lands that tap for 1 of 2 colors and gain us a life when they enter. Gaining 1 life is gaining a counter, and the fact that these are tapped is not that big of a deal. It just feels a little bit slower, but we have so many lands that do come in untapped, and we have plenty of low mana spells as well as high mana spells like our commander that these just sort of work out for us. Getting a little extra life gain can't hurt. If you want to eschew that life gain, that's okay. I would recommend upgrading these to the slow lands. Those are a little more expensive, although the prices for some have come down thanks to Secrets of Strixhaven Commander. But yeah, that's my recommendation there. We've got all 4 pain lands, and I know you're thinking 4. Well, we've got the normal pain lands, Brushland, Caves of Koilos, and Llanowar Wastes, which work like this. They work with exactly the same text as our talismans. They tap for colorless, or 1 of 2 colors if we're willing to let them do damage to us. Terrific lands that do damage to us in our to make mana, and thereby turn on the second half of our commander's ability. Just a life gain. I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, Moseo works in the reverse. Yes. I misspoke earlier about Moseo. That's fine. Moseo reanimates things based on life gain. Betor reanimates things based on life loss and puts counters on things based on life gain. So yeah, kind of similar, but different. Anyway, that's Llanowar Wastes, I guess, and our other 3 normal pain lands are very good for us. And if you wanted to side grade these, there are some deserts that can only tap for 1 color apiece, but also have other utility, and all cost life when you tap them. Those are Hash Up Oasis, Ifnir Deadlands, and Shefet Dunes. But in any case, we also have Murmuring Bosk. This is a card I don't get to run that often. It is a forest, so it has the basic type forest, and therefore inherently taps for green. And it says, as it enters, we can reveal a Treefold card from our hand, and if we don't, it comes in tapped. Which means it will always come in tapped, because we don't have any Treefolk in this deck. But we're running it because it is a basic type land, taps for green, or we can tap it for white or black if we're willing to let it do damage to us. So it's a pain land unless we tap it for green. So it's a tri-land for us. That's a tapped tri-land. Also helps us take damage during our turn. It's basic typed. This is everything we want. We are running, like I mentioned, the Tango lands. We have the new Eclipsed Steppe as our example, which is still a couple of dollars, but I think it's going to go down over the next few months. This is a plains and a swamp, so it taps for white or black, and it enters tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. Now in this deck, we only have 11 basics, so a lot of the times these Tango lands are going to come in tapped. But sometimes, maybe not, you know? Even if they are going to come in tapped though, that means we can still fetch them with Farseek. They'll come in tapped that way anyway, so that's fine. If you wanted to upgrade the Tango lands, again, I might recommend the Shocks for that. We're running Sandstep Citadel. This is our tri-land for the deck. It's a tap land that makes all of our colors. Sounds great. It's a worse version of Path of Ancestry, which is a worse version of Command Tower, and we're still worth running it. If you wanted to upgrade this, it's much more expensive, but Indatha Triome is this same text, but because it has all 3 basic land types, plus it can be cycled for 3 basic mana, or 3 generic mana. So yeah. Last, we have these 5 utility lands. Castle Lochthwain is a land that enters tapped unless we control a swamp. That's our most populous color, so not that uncommon. It can tap for black, and if we pay 1 and double black and tap it, we can draw a card and then lose life equal to the number of cards in our hand. Pretty great for us. One more way of gaining card advantage and losing life, but this can cause us to lose more life than just the one that we're often losing when we gain card advantage. In addition, we know we can activate this and we know exactly how much we're going to lose, so we know if we need to do this in order to turn on the second half of our commander's triggered ability so that we can bring things back from the graveyard. Pretty good. Demolition Field is in here because although I mentioned earlier that the kind of decks I make are for tables that typically don't like land destruction, you do have to have an answer to problematic non-basics, like a Rogue's Passage with a Voltron deck that's making their giant commander slam in unblockably, or a Glacial Chasm that's preventing us from doing damage to our opponent. Demolition Field is my answer for those. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless mana, but we can also pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So neither they nor we are down a land, but we have basic lands, assuming we had some left in our library, in untapped. We've got access to mana, the same amount that we probably had before, but we've gotten rid of something problematic, and that's fine. Nothing objectionable about Demolition Field, even in this type of deck, I believe. High Market is next. This is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or we can tap it and pay nothing else besides sacrificing a creature to gain life. So if we need to put a creature in our graveyard so that we can reanimate it, that sounds good. We need to gain some life so that we can put counters on things with Betor at our instep, that sounds good. High Market does it all for us. Horizon of Progress is a little expensive for a land, but it is an untapped land that if we tap it and pay a life, we can make 1 mana of any type that a land we control could produce. So this could be a tri-land and a pain land in the process. It's not in the pain land section though, because it does other things. For 3 and tap, we can put a land from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. Sometimes we will have drawn so many cards from our many card advantage effects that we're going to have too many cards in our hand, and maybe we go to cleanup. That's not so bad. We put cards in our graveyard we can reanimate next turn. But why throw away our lands when we can just pay some of our excess mana and put them into play and give it a little bit of acceleration? Sometimes it works. Pretty nice. Finally, if we want, we can pay 1, tap, and sack this land to draw a card. So we can just throw this away if we need card advantage, or we need a card to do something else with, or if we just want to get something off the top of our library, maybe for Gwenum, or maybe for our Pact Weapon. All of those are worthwhile. Last of all, we have Vault of the Archangel. It goes in most white and black decks, honestly, but this is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or if we pay quite a lot of mana, 2, a white and a black, and tap it, but all of our creatures gain Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn if we do. 1 more way to gain life, 1 more way for that pseudo evasion, or to just kill a bunch of opponent's creatures. Vault of the Archangel helps us out a lot. And that will cover it. Thanks again to InKing727 for requesting this commander, as well as for waiting for me to fit it into my weekly rotation. If you'd like to request a commander deck and you are the patient sort, let me know in the comments, although it may be a little while before I have more time for requested decks to go live, but we'll just have to see. Stay tuned. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel, and remember that magic is fun. You should play more magic.